the other day I had David Dayen on. One of the conversations we had, and I think this came up also, in fact it did, with Crystal earlier in the program, was where is Harris on corporate power, as in part a function of unionism, but also more specifically on antitrust. We have been following this sort of assault on the antitrust policies of the Biden administration by some of the billionaire class, Reid Hoffman, others. And there's been, considerable pushback. We're talking about a narrow arena here, right? I mean, your average person out there is not saying, if you ask her about, ask that average person about their perspective on Lina Khan, they will look at you and say, what are you talking about? If you say, do you want Jonathan Cantor to maintain his position at the DOJ? They will say, what is wrong with you? Like, we're at a party. Why
has this
why
happened?
Are you such a nerd?
To you?
No, this never happened to me.
Never happened to me either.
No.
Yeah.
No. But within the circle of people who are aware of these people and the implications of it, particularly in the wake of this massive Google loss, in finding that they are a monopoly, or they've been, inappropriately using their monopoly power. This is a big deal. And this is interesting. This guy, Roger Altman, Evercore founder, longtime Democratic donor. This is, I don't know how true it is, what his perspective is, but this is what I think people are hoping for, to indicate that the price associated with firing a Lina Khan, the price associated with firing a Jonathan Cantor, with inhibiting what has been done in terms of antitrust, is just not worth it to the administration. Like, there's not enough donor bundlers there, whatever it is, whatever's on the side of the ledger to fire them, the price associated with that is just too high. And that's what we are hoping for. And that's why these things are actually important to just even churn up and make it clear that people are engaged in on some level. Here is Evercore founder Roger Altman with Andrew Ross Sorkin on CNBC.
Wes Moore yesterday, the governor from Maryland. For the governor of Maryland, and he was saying, we were talking about the regulatory sort of universe when it comes to antitrust and the like. You're in the banking business. That part matters to you, and I think there's a whole view that this administration may have put a chill, if you will, on particular kinds of deal-making, antitrust and the like. Others say, you know what, it was, this kind of approach was in order. It hadn't been, we haven't approached this in a long time this way around competition. We should be. He seemed to suggest that he thought.
Incidentally, both those things can be true. We can both have put a chill on a certain type of deal making, and this type of policy was in order. And in fact, that's the whole point.
Yep.
Not only is there value in the cases that you win, but it's a sign, and this is why you've seen a lot less mergers in many, or at least there's speculation that's why you've seen a lot less mergers and more growing businesses, is because the FTC, the DOJ is out there basically saying, like, we're on the job now. We're the police essentially are back on the beat, and you may not get away with this merger that you might have gotten away with during the Trump years, or frankly, during the Obama years, or frankly, during the Clinton years. And so those two things, it's not some deals are being chilled and some people think this is an appropriate policy. That's one thing. Go ahead.
We haven't approached this in a long time this way around competition. We should be. He seemed to suggest that he thought that Harris actually might shift on some of those issues. What do you think?
Well, first, I think that the antitrust regime under President Biden has been too extreme. Maybe we did need a correction because there were certain things that were allowed to go forth in earlier years, the Trump years, which I might not, for example, have favored from a competition policy point of view. Whether President Harris, if she achieves that, makes a change, Andrew, I don't know. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me because there's so much controversy over Jonathan Kanter and Lena Khan, but I wouldn't expect that change right out of the gate. And I'm not sure whether it would be made or it wouldn't. If I were, one of the high-profile, for example, Silicon Valley types who are clamoring publicly for Lena Khan's head, honestly, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because it fires up the progressives. You then have a tug of war between the progressives and those who want a change, and it's not constructive. So I don't know if there'll be a change in that regard. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't really know that.
Okay, right.
That's so funny. He's basically saying, Reid Hoffman, you idiot.
You guys blew it. Yes. This is something you do behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, this is a great indication of the value of making a stink of, like, frankly, this is why, like, the American prospect exists. This is why there's value in reading Matt Stoller's Substack. And then frankly, there are some instances, particularly things that are like this sort of narrow and niche. There's actually value in tweeting this stuff out. There's actually, value in sending. Do you know how many like public comments probably our government gets when it comes to things like antitrust? That are from like just average citizens.
Right, be a big fish in a small pond.
Totally.
Yeah.
But a very, very, very important pond in terms of like how it implicates our economy, our democracy, more importantly. So this is interesting. And he's basically saying, like, we're going to now, because these idiots went out there and trying to sell the idea that they were two different people, the donor, the expert, said Reid Hoffman. We got to go out there, and now we got to be quiet and hopefully bide our time. But the point is, be on alert. What you're indicating to the administration is that there's going to be a cost associated with this, and it's not going to be easy. And if you do this, be prepared to pay a price. And
it's fascinating too, because I think they're right now, the billionaires and the money donors and the bundlers, their leverage is undercut by this incredibly unorthodox and unprecedented situation that we're in. Like, this is the same reason I think Harris was able to pick her vice presidential candidate in a way that was like what she saw as most favorable to her, someone she'd want to work with, versus a long primary process would have been a year-long deal-cutting situation, where all of these guys would have been able to exert their leverage as opposed to having to go out on CNBC and do so in back rooms. She would have been forced to select a vice presidential pick that is Obama didn't want to pick Hillary Clinton for Secretary of State, but he did because they cut deals in that very contentious primary. And like, that's how this stuff happens. And that's part of why, like, I don't love that our elections are so long compared to parliamentary systems throughout the world. It's just the fact that this is 2 years to run an election. It gives all of these guys an opportunity to flex and use what they need to do, or use their power to make, to shape administrations. And so, even though this was not the most democratic outcome by any stretch, in the sense of like, I wish we had a real primary, there are upsides to it where she benefits from the enthusiasm without having to make backroom deals in the lead up to it in order to appease some of these billionaires, as long as she, of course, holds the line on Lena Khan.
And Sam, Matt and I discussed this a little bit on Wednesday when it came to Lena Khan in the context of the Jake Tapper and Reid Hoffman interview. I think, as you guys are saying, the exposure, or at least kind of like the sunlight on this, even if it's coming amidst like donors kind of grousing about Lena Khan, is really important because it made it so that Reid Hoffman had to like issue like a lengthy statement on Twitter being like, to be clear, my support is not contingent upon Harris firing Lena Khan. I'm not asking for that. Like, whether it's true or not, at the very least that was put in writing as a result of this scrutiny, I think is important and helpful for the cause going forward of just like keeping the robust antitrust nature of the Biden administration going into a potential Harris administration.
Yeah. Duber says what this banker is admitting is that if the issue is public, then the bankers and the business lose. It means this banker thinks Harris will cave to progressive pressure. I mean, that is, it is clear that they perceive like we can't do this publicly because there's just too much pushback publicly. So we got to be quiet about this, guys. And again, that is a sign of the kind of weakness we want in a president, right? That this is not a battle I feel like I can win publicly. It's something I'll have to do on the sly if I'm going to do it. And so vigilance is not only warranted here, but there's reason to believe it will pay off. And again, the other thing too is, and people should understand this, there's like a, what do they call it? Path, I can't remember the last.
Path of least resistance?
No. Path dependency or maybe path dependency or the idea is that like, look, after 5 or 6 years of this, it becomes that much harder to dislodge. You can dial it back a little bit and this and that, but the philosophy and the orientation of these departments shifts fundamentally, so much so that you need to actually reshift it. You need to make a very concerted effort. And again, it's like administration, when a new administration gets in, they only have a limited amount of resources. This is the thing that we don't, I think, really fully grasp about the way that a presidential administration works. They've got to get people into these spots that are going to execute in a very specific way, to change things. And the thing is that you got like Lena Khan out there, you got Cantor, you got, Chopra at the Consumer Financial Bureau. These are all people who have been like out there developing these antitrust ideas and ideologies for years and are supported by institutions. There's nothing there. All the neoliberal stuff is still there. And it's not hard to necessarily find like, I don't know, somebody from the Brookings Institute or whatever the AEI, we're not the American Enterprise Institute. Yeah, I guess. They're the lefty there. And who can come in and destroy this stuff. But it's not just Lena Khan there. They're hiring people who buy into the concept of antitrust. Those people are not going to be replaced. They're there. They're creating the institutional memory that goes forward. And so, these things, it's not just one edict that goes down and everybody changes. These agencies can slow walk stuff. They can, hold out. I mean, it's interesting. Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.